How you doing, man? Wow, we both got a background upgrade. Yeah.
Yeah, and hats.
Yeah. Can you hear me okay? Okay, your volumes could be a little louder.
Okay, let me see what I can
Oh,
do.
it's a distance issue? It's your laptop or what?
Well, it's a new laptop, and I haven't quite got it
Oh,
figured
cool.
out. Um,
Or you could just shout the whole show. You could just shout at me. I probably feel like shouting right about now, so.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
strange times.
very
Um,
strange times.
Wait, here we
But
go.
I mean, I can hear you. It just would be probably more comfortable if it was a little louder.
Yeah, I don't have like a microphone or anything.
Oh, I
Is
see.
it-
So it's about really moving that laptop towards you, but do you really want to have it held on your lap and then be shaking the whole time?
well, that's kind of where we're at now.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I mean, it's not that bad. I can hear you.
Well, I just turned the speakers up, so hopefully it's cool.
Yeah, I think it's cool. I've also got these little Bluetooth Bose things in my ears, just so I could wear the hat, man. I wanted to wear the hat like old times.
I just didn't want to brush my hair.
Well, I just didn't want anybody to see how bald I am. So there you go.
Yeah, yeah. We all have our reasons.
We all have our reasons. Yeah. So who's the judge? Everyone's got some kind of reason. You know.
Hey man, I like how your mom kept you humble on the post
Oh
there.
yeah, wasn't that awesome?
That was
Right,
cool.
mom. You're right, mom. Thanks, mom. I'll be a good boy. But she was right.
Yeah. Well, that's quite an honor. I mean, I didn't think anybody even, except for our inner circle, really watched these. But it's good to see that maybe we're getting more exposure, more, people are kind of
Yeah.
tuning in.
I don't know how exactly. I mean, I think I've heard of the Square magazine. But then I looked into it a little bit and it sounds like it's based out of London.
Hmm.
So it's associated maybe with the United Grand Lodge of England. Um, so yeah, it makes it even more curious in my mind. Like, how did they find out? But they probably got somebody suggested it to them or something. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. That's
And
cool though.
anyway, yeah, it's cool. And then it's an honor to be recognized in any way, shape, or form. But what was I going to say about it? Grand Lodge of England. Oh yeah, maybe they do that every month too. I don't know if they have like a podcast section in every single episode and they list out 8 new ones or whatever, and so that makes it much less of an honor.
Well, let's not
So
let's not
yeah,
think too much into it. We'll ride the wave.
I know. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Let's pretend like it's Time Magazine.
Right,
You know.
right. Oh, hold on a second. I
So
lost you. I
yeah,
hit a
no
button.
problem.
I don't know what I did here.
Yeah.
Oh, there you are. Okay, cool.
Yeah. So with you, I feel like there's no reason to prepare.
Yeah, it's all
Yeah.
fluid.
Yeah, it's all fluid. It's 100% fluid. I guess because we have a groove in our conversation that started in the lodge.
Yeah.
Some of the best conversations. Well, I guess one of the best things about Freemasonry for me in terms of the social aspect has been like side discussions with brothers,
Yeah.
whether it's
And
in the lodge or before dinner or, or during dinner or after lodge is over, before people go home or at the bar.
yeah, and I think that's been a huge part of Masonry all along, right? Like, especially back in the days when they had to hide and talk about, these radical
Right.
ideas that, could get them killed. Now I think it's definitely continued. That's been my attraction to Masonry. Because, quite honestly, I don't agree 100% with every brother in there, but I know that we all have the same moral standards, and we have, we think alike enough to do some good and for ourselves and for others. Like for me, I feel like I totally get a lot out of each time I watch a degree, I get something new out of it. Each time I like have a little 5-minute conversation, in between things, it's like
Yeah.
those little moments like add up to wisdom, to knowledge, to light.
That's right. I completely agree. Um, by the way, I'm sure you're watching all these protests.
Yeah.
Um, and I try to avoid politics, even though I might have some internal thoughts of my own. But obviously, as a Mason, you tend to avoid politics. Plus, I have previous life as a federal government employee, so that already taught me that lesson even before Masonry.
Mhm.
But now more so. But these protests are quite interesting because I just noticed that they're calling them the Fed Up Rising,
That's weak.
and that's weak. You said.
Yeah, like you can come
I
up with
mean,
something better than that.
I don't know though. Think about it, because actually before I saw that on online just a couple hours ago, I was already thinking that this is going to be more than just about race and police
Mm,
violence. I mean, sure, that's the trigger, right? And that's a very well deserved trigger. I mean, it's been a problem we've been dealing with for a while, and it it harkens back to just racism as a structural problem, and how to really finally overcome that on the
mm,
deepest level across society. It's a very difficult issue and a very challenging issue. But I think it's also compiled and aggravated further by other frustrations and tensions. You know what I mean? Because like you could be mad at your wife about an argument you have with your wife and then take it out on your kid
mm.
and say it's because the kid did this. But it was actually because, well, the kid did that, and that was the trigger. You were looking
The
for a trigger
butterfly
at that
effect.
point.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I feel like there's frustration around COVID inside of this.
Hmm.
Um, there's frustration around economic woes.
Well, yeah,
There's
and the
frustration about,
split. Like it's
yeah,
too many people are in the middle that are not making it, and this has made it more apparent. Like, I mean,
mm,
I think
yeah,
my lucky stars, the great architect, that my wife and I have been able to continue working. But I have a lot of friends in Michigan who are in like restaurant industry and factories and stuff, and they're not collecting paychecks like they did. They are getting a little bit of extra unemployment and stuff. But the
right.
reality is a lot of those businesses aren't going to even be there when things open because they couldn't float that long. And so I don't
Mm.
know. I mean, I think it's rough, but just going back to like I didn't want to make fun of your fed up thing.
The Fed
I
uprising.
think
It's not my idea.
I
Yeah.
would call it Rage Against the Machine or something like that. Like,
Yeah.
but I I
Yeah. It's kind of
agree.
that too, isn't it? Yeah.
But see, I think that not to get too political, but I think that it's more. It's an uprising has to happen for change to happen, right? I don't agree with people
Mm.
like looting and all that kind of stupid stuff, but something needs to happen. And I think
Yeah.
that like our political system, the two-party system, is crap. I don't think we have enough option. I think
I
two
agree with that.
people control the whole economic of the world. I think
Well, it's
that's
absurd
wrong.
as if there's two. It's absurd as if there's only two types of people in the world, right?
Right.
Democrat, Republican. Give me a break.
Yeah.
Let us breathe. Let us have options. Let us
Yeah.
think for ourselves.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So I think it's definitely people are fed up about a lot of things. I think they're fed up with the political situation, and it doesn't matter what side you're on. If you're a Trump supporter, you're fed up with CNN. You're fed up with fake news. You're fed up with the Democrats, or however that they want to call them, to mean basically idiots.
Libtards.
Um, Libtards is another name. Yeah. It's basically insulting to the intelligence, but I mean the left does it too.
Yeah.
To the
Yeah.
right, we
Yeah.
call them like hicks, racist. Low education, low IQ. I mean, you
Trumpsters.
know, yeah. I mean, but both sides are calling each other idiots. Basically, it's
Yeah.
funny.
Yeah.
And it's not funny at all at the same time. So I think that as Masons, because we're supposed to bring like peace into this world, and tranquility and prosperity for all, and equality and respect. We're supposed to bring all those things in the world. I think this is the time when we're needed most, to try to bridge that divide. We can't depend on leadership or one particular person to do that. I think it's got to be a mass effort, and there needs to be a critical mass of people that actually are trying to bridge the divide, are trying to bring people together, are trying to be more understanding of an opposing perspective, perhaps, without running to insult. You know?
Yeah. I mean, I think part of our job too is to be able to see past that two-sided thing because that in itself is just a diversion to keep you from paying attention to the things that matter, which is humanity, right? Is
Mm.
the betterment of humanity. And I feel like there's too many like greedy people that are, have made it an art of like, like this distraction thing, like, well, hey, he called you this, that shit we did when we were in like grade school, right? Like, oh, Susie said you had big boogers in your nose or whatever,
Right, right,
and,
right, right.
just starting stupid shit.
Yeah,
And that's what's going on in the world right now, man.
it's amazing. I know, it's amazing. Um, yeah, and even people on social media, not controlling themselves. I think some people are learning that lesson though, to try to be a little bit more polite and respectful on social media. But it's still an issue, and I went through it early on, where I'd get into tit for tat arguments with people, and then I got exhausted, and it wasn't helping. And I was stressing myself out for what? Am I going to change somebody? So why argue back and forth? And so I backed away. And now when I see these, I guess they're called trolling of comments or anything, or posts that might trigger me to want to respond, I say, no, not going to, just not going to. I'm not going to do anything.
Not
Just
taking the
leave
bait.
it alone. Yeah, not taking the bait. And I think that's been a really good decision on my part. And when I do respond, I try to be really, really, really diplomatic, and start off by saying how I understand and agree with the person,
Yeah, yeah.
even if they're pretty much almost opposite to what I think. And I think that's important because you got to form that bridge, or else they're not going to listen to you,
Very
because you
true.
didn't give them any respect to start off. And at least give them the respect to say, I see your point, and there's a logic to it.
Hmm.
And here's what I'm saying. Here's what I'm trying to say. And I'm not saying you don't have a good point, because that's a point, and I understand that. So here's another point I would make, so we can have a couple points with a couple different perspectives, and we can think about it together. What's the
Yeah, it's
problem?
negotiations, man. Yeah, yeah, that's how you
That's
do it.
it's kind of like negotiations. Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
I
true.
mean, for me, and I've actually seen a couple of your back and forths, back in the day, like,
Back in the day. Yeah.
yeah. And, I always thought you were very good at, because that, to me, that is like a diplomatic way of doing things. Like you come in and like, hey, I understand that, this, and this, but think about it this way or look at it this way. And I think for what it is, as a father, I've learned that you have to do that because like your kid will not hear a word you're saying if you start out you
Yep.
or
I
it's tone,
know.
it's
God,
words.
tell me about it. I know.
Yeah, yeah,
They
and
shut
it's the
down right
same
away.
thing. Yeah, so if you can get a person to
Mm.
listen, then that's half the battle. That was like my dad did like
Yes.
imago workshops, and he was a therapist and all that. And the main thing of the imago movement was for couples to be able to hear and
Wait,
speak.
just to clarify, you said amaga, not the MAGA
No,
movement.
imago, IMAGO.
Imago. Okay.
It's
Okay.
the imago movement. It was started up by a gentleman named Dr. Harville Hendricks, really big in the early 90s. And like I got paid to go to a workshop because it was all women that had been watching Oprah and saw him on Oprah. So it's like at the some Chicago metropolitan thing, and doing this workshop. And I used to film them while I was in college for extra
Hmm.
cash. But what I learned was that you more than half the time what you say to your partner is not what they're hearing, and you need to come
Mm.
up with a technique of sorts to be able to
Mm.
hear what they're saying and say and make sure that they're hearing what you're saying so that you have an understanding. Because we often talk of
Mm.
emotion or rage or whatever, and
That's right.
that's like going into a fight mad, right? You're going to lose most likely because your head's not there. You're all like ah! But it's the same, I think, with humans when they communicate. And I think
Fascinating.
with the media and with playing, I feel like the people that are doing these things know this at a high level, right? Like how people communicate, what's the best way to get through them, and maybe use that to the opposite, right? Like um for evil, or, for an
Yeah.
agenda, right? Like to keep
Yep.
people
Yep.
at each other's, like the whole racial thing, I mean, we should have been over this shit years ago, but here we are.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, that's why, I think that, there's a fundamental misunderstanding in how change occurs. I think, globally, whether it's, international development or, a social movement of some kind, but a lot of people assume that change occurs from adjusting something in the external environment. That if we just create some jobs, or we promote this type of person, or we, increase, tax rebates, or I don't know what, that things will get better, but, or the climate will improve, or whatever it is. But they don't realize that all change starts within. Everything in this
Masonry
world
knows
starts
that.
from within. Yeah. It starts from within. And so if you want to see an external change, you need to change what's inside people. You need to change the way people think,
Mm-hmm.
their values, their fundamental beliefs. If those don't change, nothing you try by manipulating this fluid environment is going to sustain in the long term. It might look like it's working while you're investing in it and you're pushing hard, and you got a lot of people sort of lining up with, what they want that likability bias. So they're saying yes to everything you say. You've got the funding, or whatever the case may be. But it's not going to sustain as soon as, I see this all the time. I've worked in international development, for like, I don't know, 12 years, 13 years, something like that. And that's, I think, why a lot of these international development projects fail. It's because we don't understand the context that we're working in. We don't understand the complexity of the system we're intervening in. And we often come in with some hubris, thinking we're experts. And we can't see the world from alternative perspectives, but we're so embedded in our own, right, when we go abroad. Mm-hmm. And we try to impose our template on that environment, thinking that that's going to fix it, or that's going to change it to make it look more like what I think it needs to look like. But these things don't sustain. And as soon as you back off, they go back to the way they were behaving before. Good or bad, that's your judgment, but they'll go back to the way they were before. I don't know if that makes any sense, but
it does. And
I've seen that a lot.
I get that. And one of the things you were at earlier, like when you first started talking there, was it seems like we need a new way to educate people, like to train people to learn how, like what we do through our ritual and what we, like we need to train people to be, I don't want to, I don't even know what the word is, like more consciously aware of, other cultures, other people's feel. I don't know. It's just like, I feel like the cookie cutter that we're using now in like our public school systems and everything, it's not working, in our churches, it's not working,
That's a good point. Yeah. I think because with kids, you gotta stimulate their imagination. You gotta stimulate their curiosity and their passion about something. And that should really, and that's going to give them that energy and that will that they need to study a topic,
Yeah.
It's very hard to teach somebody something that they're absolutely have zero interest in learning. Zero interest in learning. So if I try to teach you about I don't know, what can you're pretty open-minded guy. You probably find everything interesting at some level,
Pretty
right?
much.
I don't know what I could teach you that you wouldn't think was fascinating.
I can pretend though. Go ahead, man.
I don't know, man. How to paint a wall white. I want to do a one-day workshop with you. See, but you're a messed up case. So, you'd probably enjoy that. I can't think of anything that wouldn't be interesting to you. Can you think of something that wouldn't be interesting to you to learn about?
Oh, yeah, sure. Like economics has always been a challenge for me to, and it's part of the reason, like my wife is really good at it. And so like she handles all our bills, handles all that stuff. So I don't pay attention to it. I don't I just recently started doing some trading in stocks and, just for fun, like some hemp stocks and stuff. And,
okay.
And, now
what is hemp? What is hemp? No.
It's the future.
As you were. Yeah, I know. As you were.
So I'm economics is boring to me. like I never really took any. Check this out. In college, man, I went to Columbia College in Chicago, and I took what did I take? It was like a Math 101 refresher course or whatever,
Mm-hmm,
and
mm-hmm.
I did it just because it was you know, an easy A or whatever, and plus I was never great in like algebra or trig or any of that, and in that class there was a one of our security people was the taking a class, you know, because he got a free class for working there or something like that. And our instructor, our professor, was Filipino, and he could not understand a damn word she was saying. Right? I mean, she had a thick accent,
Mm,
so it
mm.
was. So I helped this dude
Challenging.
through the class, right? And then I got recommended to be a tutor. So I worked in the math center for like a year, got all my
Wow.
credits taken care of, math, science, all that, like in my first 2 years of school, and never took over Math 101.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that, you know, that's just a fun story, but
Sure.
I'm really not I've avoided like getting real deep because I just haven't, you know, grasped it. That's like even
Yeah. Yeah.
you know,
I mean,
yes.
but you say you had challenges with like economics, but it doesn't mean you wouldn't be interested in learning though, right? Or
Oh
are you not
no.
interested in learning?
No. Like the Pythagorean you know, uh what equation or whatever, you know,
Pythagorean theorem or whatever it is.
theorem. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I've dove into that a bit to try to, you know, grasp my head around it, and that's a little bit easier to do because you can blow it up into like a more of like a universal type
Mm.
situation versus
Yeah.
a little triangle on your page or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
But no,
Yeah.
yeah,
The Pythagorean, but go ahead. Sorry.
no. I was just gonna say I do have interest, but like you said,
Yeah.
I'm a curious guy.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, and the Pythagorean theorem is very important in Masonry. It's a very important symbol in Masonry, but you know, I haven't heard a proper explanation of its mystery yet. Honestly, in my opinion, I've heard some explanations, you know, but they've never really satisfied me. I've always felt like, well, there must be something more there. There's just someone doesn't know or people don't know, but there's got to be some more there. Like I've heard the whole thing of Isis and Osiris make Horus or whatever, and Horus is the hypotenuse. Um, you know, that it's sort of the Trinity idea, or it's giving birth from the male and the female, and you get the child,
Yeah,
which is, you know, kind of deep. But why the Pythagorean theorem? Why those dimensions? You
mm.
know, there
Yeah,
must be
like
something
there.
more.
Yeah, that's what I've,
Yeah,
you know, because I've been, uh, you know, I've been in lodge for quite some time, and I've heard many explanations as well, but have not grasped the significance either yet.
mm,
And you know what? That's another project. That's something, and that's what one of the other
sure.
things about masonry that, especially lately, like with the esoteric stuff, you know, it's like, you know, it's like opening a new book. You know, it's like, oh wow, this is all new. This
Man,
is great.
I
You
know.
know.
Well, have you been having a problem reading? I mean, I have a lot of books. They're all around me, and I've got some really, really good books that I'm very excited to read, but I can never have enough time to really sink my teeth into them the way I want to. And I'm also going a bit from book to book because it's like an embarrage de choix. You have all these
Sure.
this good buffet of all this food. You don't know where to start. You want to try a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and you never really get down to the meat of the meal. You know, that's kind of the problem I'm having right now with reading. And I think it's
Yeah.
mostly because of time constraints with work. I've been working a lot lately. Hate that. Uh,
It's inconvenient. I know. Yeah, I
it
finished
is.
this book you lent me, Freemasonry and Catholicism, and I had the way I did it is every morning I go sit next to my plant in my chair, look out the window, and have my coffee, and I've been reading. And so, you know,
Oh,
I'd read like a chapter. But the problem is there's so
uh,
much in here, man. I mean, it's like
hey,
I feel like
show it to the audience. Show the book there.
yeah, I feel like I need to read it
Max
again.
Heindel, Freemasonry and
Yeah,
Catholicism.
I
So I
mean,
lent this book to Doug.
yeah.
I'll probably just give it to you as a gift. You deserve it, man.
No, you can have it back, but I need
It's
to
so cheap.
reread
I
it
mean, what
again.
was it? $15? What's my problem? You know, you can keep it.
Well, but if it's part of
I've
your
already read
library,
it.
yeah, but you've
Yeah,
also underlined things that are important to you, and you know,
that's right. So when I gave that to you, I was wondering, like, what's Doug going to think of what I underlined? I wonder, like, while he's reading it, if he's also going to find those same things interesting, or will he read some of them like, well, why the hell did he underline that? Was he
Well,
some
of
kind of
course,
idiot?
yeah, of course, I'm trying to get into your brain, like I'm
Right,
analyzing
right,
the whole
right.
situation. But to tell you the
Right.
truth, I
Because of
use,
course you're like me.
yeah, but to tell you the truth, like what I've done is like, say, I missed a day or two of reading, I would go
Right.
back and I would look at your underlying things and it would bring it back to me, right? Then I'd be like, oh, that's what
Right.
it
They're
was.
key. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Because usually I underline, I don't care about book quality and stuff. Like people say, oh, shouldn't underline the actual book, keep the book nice. I'm like, a book is there. If you're not using it and getting your knowledge from it, I'm talking about nonfiction. I mean, fiction, you shouldn't be highlighting, I don't think, unless you got some project you're working on.
yeah,
But nonfiction, I mean, you're there, you're learning, you want to learn. That's the book's utility. I mean, so I have no problem underlining. And I always underline what I think is what stands out as fascinating or something I want to remember or be able to refer back to.
sure, sure.
Yeah.
And that's what, that's how I, and I'm sure a lot of
Yeah.
us did our college work. You go through, you underline a bunch of crap as you read it, and then you go back and write it down, and then, you
Right.
remember it. But
So what about that book, man? So have you read some of it?
oh, I've read it all, man.
Oh, okay. What'd you
Yeah.
think?
Well,
Book
like I,
review, book review.
I thought that I actually, the reason it's sitting next to me is I anticipated you were going to ask me about it. And
Ah,
so, like, I started looking at, I mean, it's, it's interesting, like the Cain and Abel dichotomy, and earlier when we were talking and you said there's not Democrats and just Republicans, only two type of people, then I thought, well, maybe there are. They're
yes.
Cain and Abel.
Yeah, I know. I actually, that popped through my mind while I was saying that to you.
Yeah, because
Yes.
maybe that's it. I don't know. But
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I felt that was interesting, like looking at the different and just the whole timeline and the storyline of things, like how man started out androgynous. That was some shit I'd
Yeah.
never heard before.
Hey, bro, we're losing you there. Getting your
Oh,
head
okay.
half ahead. Okay, now you're back. There you
Sorry, I was
go.
getting excited, throwing my arms around.
I know. Pretty soon it's just the tip of your head, and then we
I'm
have a yellow
sinking.
wall, folks. A yellow wall.
I'm
Where did
sinking.
Doug go? Yeah, to the bowels of the earth.
I said the wrong thing. Yeah, but no, I mean,
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. It was a good read, but like I said, I'm gonna go back and read it again because there was so much in there that. But I'm not gonna read it like right away again. Like what I'd
Yeah.
like to
Yeah.
do is do some other research into some other things, and then come back to it, and then
Right.
maybe the because it's like our kids aren't ready to hear things at certain times. Maybe I'm not ready to ingest that at that time. So maybe if I come back to it
Oh yeah.
later, you know.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and most good like spiritual books or deeper esoteric books. I mean, you can come back to them all your life, and you'll always be seeing something else in it. It
Yeah.
just never stops, like feeding the mind. Because there's always levels. There's multiple levels of these things, and like even the whole Cain and Abel story that's in that book, that Rosicrucian sort of temple legend that's expounded upon in that book. I don't know if we should tell people what it's about, or
I
it's
think
kind
an
of a long
overview.
story, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, the
Do you
thing
do that?
is I mean, I think that I mean, you could tell it to the best of your knowledge, and a person would still read it and get a whole bunch out of it, right? I mean,
Sure,
because
sure.
there's so much stuff in there. Um,
Right.
yeah, but I mean, it is like the whole Rosicrucian angle was strange because I hadn't really like looked into them much before, like
Mm,
it's just started popping up in the last couple of years, where I've been,
mm,
interested in looking and um,
right.
it's interesting, I also like well, what I didn't see is I didn't get the Catholic. What was the Catholic twist? Like
Oh, yeah. It was basically okay. So this is basically this Rosicrucian legend. And the Rosicrucians, by the way, I've been doing some more research on them. Seem to be one of the oldest organizations we know about, are called the Brothers of the East. They called
Hmm.
themselves. And I thought that was very interesting because we call ourselves brothers, and we always talk about the East and
Uh-huh.
Freemasonry. So Brothers from the East, or Brothers, yeah, Brothers from the East, I think it was called. Very interesting title for some ancient or old, very old Rosicrucian order from, I don't know, 1500s, or I don't even know, maybe 1400s. I'd have to check my research on that. But and there's all these different branches of Rosicrucian orders that have come out with different legends, apparently. And there's variants even on this legend. I think I heard one recently where it was the opposite, that Seth was the good one, and that's where the Masons and stuff came from, and not Cain,
Hmm.
which would be a more traditional interpretation too. It would line up more with what we're used to hearing, right?
Right. Yeah.
But this temple legend by the Rosicrucians that's in this book, Catholicism and Freemasonry by Max Heindel, talks about Cain was the line of the craftsman, came
Right.
from Cain, and all of the sort of scientists, engineers, artists, farmers, anybody who thought that he can achieve through work and effort and will and change his environment, was of the line of Cain. And then Seth was the kind of lay around, believe in God, have faith, and everything will just work out, and if you just believe, the faith. And then Cain was symbolic of water, and then Seth was fire, and then you get the baptism by water or the baptism of fire. And they integrate that in the temple legend, and then they
And
talk
Cain
about
going
the
into the
molten sea.
molten.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
molten sea. We
Yeah.
don't get that part in our Masonic temple legend, that
No.
fuller legend. But it's the same temple legend with just additional details, which is very
Yeah.
fascinating. And so this idea of a molten sea, even in general, think about it: molten sea. Sea is the water. Water, we think of water, and then fire is molten. So it's like if you were to merge water and fire, or balance them somehow between each other, the male and the female, you might get a molten sea, which was the grand project of Hiram Abiff, I believe, in this temple legend, was to create
It
that
was.
molten sea. So it's very interesting. Um,
But circle back
and
to the
I highly recommend. So
Catholicism.
Catholicism. So what's the connection there? Hey, buddy, can you turn that down? I'm on a call. Just turn it off. Turn the sound off. Yeah, I'll show you. Let me see. Hang on 1 second.
No problem, man. Hey, buddy.
There you go. That's Moses.
Hey, Moses.
So so the Catholicism thing. So according to Heindel and this group of Rosicrucians that he was aligned with, believed that the Catholic Church was descended from the line of Seth. They were the Sethians. They were the ones of the that's why you have water outside the church, and the baptismal
Yeah,
water
yeah.
you
I
touch
remember they
before you
said
go
that.
in and
Yeah.
stuff. That was symbolic of the line of Seth. And so they were the Sethians, and they wanted control, and they've been in control. But there's been a back and forth between authority in the world between the line of Cain and the line of Seth. And so the Sethians, according to the temple legend here, were like the priest class,
Right.
the one that lived by faith. And then the Cainites were the scientists, the Enlightenment thinkers, who were fiery and passionate and had a lot of zeal. Okay, yeah. Sorry, man. There you go. So the line of Cain were the fire, and they were all about hard work and effort. And the other little piece of this temple legend from the Rosicrucians that Max Heindel talks about here is that the line of Cain was born from Eve actually mating with like an Elohim or something like that. I think it was Samael. I think they even talk about the planet Mars and a connection with Mars or something, which makes sense. The fire god, Thor, Cain, ruddy, always out to do something, farming, tilling the fields, whereas, Abel, was more relaxed and just a pastoralist, let the animals just roam around, easy life, have some milk, relax. And so, yeah, that's the other part of the temple legend, is that the line of Cain are kind of like half God, half human beings. And the line of Seth were from the 100% human children of Adam and Eve, that line. So the idea is that you're half God. That's why you're coming up with all these scientific inventions and medical innovations, and you got NASA, and you're writing books, and or you're creating masterpieces of art. This is a sign of being part of the line of Cain, this half God
Doing
quality,
Zoom
which is a
meetings.
mental quality. Doing Zoom meetings, exactly. So apparently, according to this version of why the Catholics don't like the Freemasons, is that the Catholic Church it's always been this battle of power over the world between the Sethian line and the Cainites. And the Cainites, I think they even compare to where the kings come from, and the priest class comes from Seth. So, but I think the story is very allegorical and symbolic of this sort of Masonic journey we're on to the unification of the opposites kind of idea.
Well, it just sparked because my understanding of the Catholics' problems with Freemasonry, I thought stemmed back to them owing the Knights Templar a bunch of
We're not
money, and
talking
they
about it.
called them heretics, and burned Demolay at the stake and all that. Like I thought that's where it had, because for the longest time you couldn't be a Mason if you're a Catholic, and I never
Mm-hmm.
understood. I thought, well, maybe it's because they thought we wouldn't, because I was raised Catholic, and they're pretty
Mm-hmm.
much like, this is the God. We believe in only one God.
Right.
And I
Right.
remember being like, like a little kid, and going through all catechism and all that and stuff, and not understanding how that can be. Like, I'm like, but what about all the people that haven't heard of this? Like, what about the people, in Africa who believe a different thing, or the people in
Exactly.
South America or wherever,
Yeah, are they all going to hell now, and
Yeah,
of no
it made
fault
no
of their
sense.
own?
Yeah, yeah.
What kind of God would do that to them? Leave them without any information,
Yeah, right.
and
I mean,
then send them straight to hell for being ignorant after you
talk about
refuse to educate
scarring
them.
kids, right?
I know. Trauma.
Jesus Christ. But
So
yeah.
yeah,
So yeah, I found it interesting, man. I like
yeah.
getting different takes on, on basically like, well, like with the Cain and Abel thing, like just like kind of the hero myth, and like in mythology, I love
Mm,
how there is always an actual path of the hero. There's this, there's an actual path, and I think that that's interesting that we've mapped that out, and to try to find the source of that, like what is it, like a DNA thing? Is it a environmental thing? What is it that make people do or act a
mm,
certain way? Right?
very interesting. Yeah, I mean, we're supposedly made in the image of God. So I think that and then there's a whole as above, so below, microcosm, macrocosm, alpha, omega concept, right? The Ouroboros. Um, I think that, my best guess is that we are operating by the same principles, as God, the creator itself. Somehow we are like mini versions, or we're reflective of so many aspects of God ourselves. And so
And the trick
if you
is
really want to
tapping
learn
into
about
that.
God, you learn about yourself on a deeper
Right,
level,
right.
in a
Yeah.
sense. Yeah.
And that's what I kind of, that goes along with sort of my beliefs as well, is that because you look, I think we all have the potential. We all have God within
Mm.
us, right? We are
Yeah.
this, whatever
Well, certainly.
energy
I
this
mean,
is.
I wouldn't be here right now if I didn't, right?
Yeah.
I'd be dead.
Yeah. Yeah.
I might still have God with me, but I'd be a dead version of God or something. I don't know. Which is kind of
Yeah.
interesting in its own right,
But that's what, and this is one of the things that I think draws people to Masonry or to different religions or groups or whatever, is that quest to know, or to achieve that, to get to that light, to
Hmm.
be enlightened. Like who wouldn't want to be, I mean, I'm not talking like a god, like omnipotent or anything like that, but to be
Hmm.
compassionate, to know, to see, you see a person hurting and you're able to go over there and offer like a kind word or a whatever, or I think that potential there is in all of us. And I think that all the stupid shit that goes on around us keeps us from that. And by stupid shit, I mean like the way our economy's set up, the way our society's set up. I mean, we could be so much more, man, if we didn't have to do this, like, I don't, maybe it's our nature to try to beat the next guy, but I don't think that's true. I think that we're
Yeah.
actually supposed to be helping and building each other rather than, like, oh, I make more money than you, so you're a piece of shit.
Right. Right. It's true. Yeah. We are very judgmental. And often, based on material things. It's unfortunate. I mean, I don't know. I just think that, we as Masons, we have to do something to affect, the minds of people if we really want to bring sort of peace and be whatever knights of light or knight of truth, the whole
as long
ideal, the chivalric ideal, that
as
we're
long as we get to
fighters, but
wear
we're fighters
capes.
for truth and ethics and morality, but we have shields and armor, but it's an armor of ethics and virtue, you know,
Yeah.
which is
Well,
a
we
great
do.
idea.
Yeah, like I said, as long as they're capes, like we get to wear capes.
As long as there are
But
capes, right? Yeah.
yeah.
And bright
But
colors.
um, yeah, I don't know, man. I think that leading by example, right? By do like, because we've talked about our lodge, where it has grown a ton since I've started, but we have so much more. Like, there's so many other people that don't know about us or that could become part of us and do good stuff. So I think we need to lead by example, right? Like the
Yeah.
barbecue thing that went on yesterday, and things that were
Mm.
like out in the community and showing people, hey, we're not some secret society fucking goats and drinking blood or anything like
That's
that.
right. Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
we're good people
We're people
helping
just
people.
like everybody else. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you could even say we're good Christians or we're good Muslims or we're good Hindus
Oh
or whatever
yeah,
we
yeah,
are.
yeah.
We're trying to be anyway. We're trying to be good of whatever faith we're in. I mean, the only thing that's really Freemasonic about us is that we're all trying to be better people. We're trying to improve ourselves and be more moral, be more ethical, and more virtuous in society and educate ourselves. That's what Masonry is about. I mean, that's the big thing, right? That's the big path.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I do see that path too, of especially the moral dimension of Masonry, as being an essential prerequisite to any knowledge, especially deeper knowledge or esoteric or occult knowledge. Like, if you can't prove first that you are a true Blue Lodge Mason, then you shouldn't be getting your hands on secret books.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, speaking sort of metaphorically, but I think it's very important that, if you have deep wisdom or there access to something very deep, and it usually comes with some power, right? Because now you're understanding what's going on in the background, or you're understanding the mechanics of the universe. That's not, you don't give that away to a kid, you know,
Right.
or an angry child. So you got to make sure that, people are coming in with good motives and intentions and ethics and values.
Yeah.
I
Well, that's
believe.
what. Yeah, that's what our. I think that's why, like, you've seen over the last few years, our investigative committee that goes out has, like, I've noticed over the last like 5 or 10 years or whatever, that they've gotten more strict, like now to the point where we're doing background checks and but
Yeah.
like even the sets of questions, because dude, I remember getting, when I first came in, going out on an investigation, having no idea, like, what do I do, what do I say, how can I tell if this person's
Right. Right.
like, nobody said, hey
Yeah.
Doug, this is how it's going to go down. It was just
You just
like,
like sort of
hey,
showed up
meet me
like,
at this.
I'm Doug, I'm a Mason. So I heard you want to be one too.
So
Yeah.
far so good, man, you should join.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so but
Sounds
I,
like
I
fun.
think it's gotten tighter, which is a good
Yeah.
thing, because I think, like, where we do need to grow, I don't think we need to grow so bad that we should, like, you know lower our standards, right? you
Right.
know
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I wonder, so I was wondering recently, and this is the last thing because I got to run to my boys here, so he wants some attention. But I wondered yesterday and today, like, whether interest in Masonic education should be a requirement. Like, if you're like, I'm not really interested in the education side of Masonry, I'm more into just charity work in my local community, then we might suggest there's other fraternities that focus on charity work in their local community, may even do it better than the Masons. And if you really want to get involved in that as your sole purpose, that might be a better fit. But education's a very important part of Freemasonry. Or, this is just something I was thinking.
Mhm.
I was wondering, because we don't usually put that on there, and so we get a lot of Masons that are great guys and nice guys, but maybe not so interested in the symbolism or the learning.
I think that's why, you have appended bodies and stuff. And, I think
Mm,
that maybe this thought crossed your mind when you started this group, that Esoteric Sundays, because what you'll do, or what you have done, is you attract people like me that are super curious about everything. So we
right.
want to get as much knowledge as we can. And in doing so, then we can bring that back to the lodge, right? So at those dinners, or at that whatever,
Mm,
just casually bring up, hey, I was reading about Cain and
yep.
Abel. Have you heard this stuff, man? This is crazy,
Yes.
and
Yes.
talk about it, right?
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So
No,
I
I
think
think
it's
so
good.
too. Yeah. It was more of just a reflection. I was just thinking about that. Popped into my mind as something it was like a thought exercise. That's what I would call
And my thought is like to
it.
get
Not that I
my
actually
thought,
want to do that, you know,
yeah, because
or
think of
implement that.
the things that you would have to, like, the ropes, and to get to the Grand Lodge, and say, okay, this
Right.
is something. I mean, it could be done for sure,
Right. Right.
but
I mean, you're
I
basically adding a requirement, you know. I mean,
right,
because right now,
yeah.
what are the requirements really? I mean, it's just, you just got a belief in one God, belief in God, or just like say belief in God, right? I don't even think it's one God, just belief in God. You
I
haven't
think it's a
gotten a criminal
creator,
record. You don't
yeah.
have a criminal record. You got to be 18. This is Virginia, right? You got to be 18, no criminal record, belief in God, and then the brothers make their judgment after that. So depending on the lodge, because you can get lodge that actually that blackball somebody for not a good reason, you know, from maybe your or my perspective.
And you'll have no
Um,
explanation. I've only seen it in, like, I don't know, like
so there's
I've
actually a
been
lot of room here in theory.
yeah, yeah. Well, I've seen like maybe two people blackballed in the last 10, 12 years, or whatever it is. And
I've never
one
seen
of
it.
them one of them really upset me, because what it felt to me like, it was like one of the brothers knew something about this person, or had some sort of personal thing with them, and there was no discussion. And the crappy thing about it is that this candidate was recommended by two really dedicated brothers. Like, one was the worshipful master, and one was the secretary, right? And then
The candidate was reprimanded.
no, recommended
Oh,
to
recommended.
be
Okay,
to,
yeah,
to
yeah.
be,
No, that.
like, his
Yeah,
signers on his
yeah, yeah,
petition, right? And
yeah.
that
Lodge
alone,
leadership, basically.
yeah, that alone for me was like, I will not blackball, because if they pass this
Yeah,
guy's judgment, it's good with
yeah,
me. But the thing
sure.
that pissed me off, or not pissed me off, but upset me a bit, was there was no resolution. There's no, like, can we have a meeting, an officers meeting, and just talk about it? Like, what's up? Like, what happened here? There's nothing.
Yeah, you can't really force somebody if they're uncomfortable to say it was me, but you could
And
open a conversation and say, "Hey, if anybody did blackball him, you wants to talk about it, we're open. If you don't,
they
that's fine
don't, though,
too."
man.
They don't. They
Or they
don't. They
didn't.
don't want to talk about it.
No.
Yeah,
Hey, listen,
it's
Matt,
tough.
you got to
Uh,
go.
yeah, I got to go, brother. But
All right.
thanks again. Um,
Good talking to you.
Stay safe, and we'll be in touch, obviously.
Yes, sir.
All right,
See you,
bro.
Jeremy.
Thank you.
Yep.
Cheers.